Have you ever glanced up at the wall clock in your home, only to realize it stopped working at some point? No moving hands, no familiar ticking sound, just an unusual silence in the room. A dead wall clock battery may seem like a tiny problem, but somehow it always happens at the worst moment, when you're getting ready to leave the house, when you're timing a meal, when you actually need to know the time. And here's the funny part. When we try to manage our finances and control spending, almost nobody sets aside money just to replace wall clock batteries. It's not expensive, that's true, but it's never a priority, so it gets ignored. And little by little, those small, forgettable expenses quietly add up. That's exactly why I'm here today. Because instead of buying a new battery, I've got a simple but surprisingly effective idea. A way to solve this small annoyance by bringing an old battery back to life. No new battery, no complicated tools, and no extra cost. Let's handle this the smarter way. Before reviving the battery, I'll first test 2 AA batteries with a voltage meter. This is to prove the results aren't staged, and to show you how much power a normal battery actually has. This AA battery is actually quite new. I just didn't need it. So it ended up sitting in a corner for a while. With this kind of stable energy level, it gives us a good reference point to consider when recharging a depleted AA battery. As for this dead battery, the meter shows absolutely no remaining energy at all. So it's clear this AA battery is completely unusable right now. Hopefully, that helps you trust what you're seeing here. No tricks, no setup. And with that settled, let's get started and bring this battery back to life. First, I'd like you to mix a cup of lightly salted water for me. The ratio is simple, about 9 parts water to 1 part salt. If that sounds a bit vague, don't worry. You don't have to be super precise. Just eyeball it roughly the way I do here, and you'll be perfectly fine. Do you happen to have a low-power phone charger lying around, one you're no longer using but that still works? Stick with me, and I'll show you how I modify it so it can be used to charge an AA battery. But just to be safe, take a moment to check your phone charger first. Make sure it's still working properly before moving on to the next steps. Luckily, this old charger still works just fine. That means we can safely reuse it once again. From a theoretical standpoint, so-called manual battery charging methods are based on basic electrical conduction and electrochemical reactions. A diluted saltwater solution can conduct electricity, acting as a medium that allows an electrical circuit to form and interact with the chemical processes inside a battery. In theory, if electrical current were perfectly controlled and polarity properly managed, that energy could stimulate weakened chemical reactions within the battery. However, this is not a standard or recommended charging method, and it carries significant safety risks. For that reason, this should be understood purely as a conceptual explanation, not as a practical or safe charging technique. Here, I'm using electrical insulation tape. Even though the power coming from the charger is very low and not dangerous, using insulation tape helps prevent electrical leakage and ensures a more stable connection between the wires, the metal contact, and the battery. It's a small detail, but it makes the setup cleaner, safer, and more reliable overall. You can use a binder clip like this if you don't have anything else. It keeps the battery terminals from touching the water. One important thing to keep in mind: if you notice the reaction stopping during the process, disconnect the power source immediately. That's a clear sign the charging cycle is already complete. Even though the reaction hasn't fully stopped yet, I'm going to disconnect it here and dry everything off first. After that, we'll test it right away and see how it performs. To be clear, if you don't see any result at this point, forcing the battery with heat is not recommended. Applying external heat can damage the battery and create serious safety risks, so it's best to stop here and avoid pushing it further. Safety always comes first. Can you see that? That means it worked. From a battery that seemed ready to be thrown away, it's now working again right in front of us. There's no magic here and no complicated tricks either. Just understanding the problem, taking things step by step, and making good use of what we already have. Sometimes managing expenses isn't about cutting everything out, but about knowing when reuse still makes sense. It's a small item and a small problem, but solving it can make daily life just a bit easier. If this video gave you a useful takeaway, or even a different way of looking at things, then it's done its job. Thanks for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next DIY tip.